Presenter's friend is Joe Rutter from the UK.
This is Times Radio.
Certainly is. Henry Bonsu here. My presenter's friend is Joe Rutter from the UK in a changing Europe. And don't worry so much, Jill, about the football. We'll get to it in a moment or two. But before that, just a couple of front pages, okay? If you please. At the Times, the foreign students face ban from universities. That story we were talking about earlier. Ministers explore plans to restrict admissions to top institutions in attempt to cut immigration. But this other story, just beneath the masthead here, £15,000 grants to help middle earners insulate their homes. Remember that campaign, Insulate Britain, which I think was some kind of offshoot from Extinction Rebellion or some other campaigning group. But the new fund, and this is going to be announced next week by Grant Shapps, the business secretary, is called Eco Plus, and it'll be aimed at those who are able to pay, unlike other energy efficiency schemes, and it's allocated £1 billion in funding from existing budgets for the next 3 years, and that will be available to people in council tax bands A to D. What do you think about that?
I think fundamentally it's quite a sensible idea. I mean, one of the annoying things about Insulate Britain is they might have annoyed people by blocking roads, but actually they did have a point that the UK has a very drafty housing stock that needs insulation. And it's very interesting. And one of the things people are sort of quite frustrated by when they talk about energy efficiency is how do you actually reach people who are, what you call the able to pay sector, particularly when you want them to do quite expensive things because, the cost of installing an air source heat pump, if that's a viable option for where you are, to replace your condensing boiler is, £10,000 or so, I think, at the moment, though I think Octopus Energy thinks it's bringing the cost down, I think, for that. So I think it looks like quite a sensible move. It was one of the things that was missing from the government's net zero strategy when it was published by Boris Johnson and Kwasi Kwarteng in October 2021. So it's good to see that. One of the things that everybody would say you do need to do, though, is make quite a long-term commitment to this, because one of the problems when the government had its last go at a home energy efficiency campaign, its Green Homes grant, basically it sort of wanted it as a pandemic measure to create some jobs. It ramped it up quickly, but there weren't any accredited suppliers. And then they said, well, there's no take up for this. And then they killed it because they said it's not working. So you really need to be aware that you need to build capacity to do this, because we don't have that many people who can actually install things like air source heat pumps. You need people to retrain to do that because you want this stuff being done well. So long-term commitment, work with local government. The one bit I've got a bit of reservation about is this use of council tax bands A to D as a sort of indicator of not being very well off, because I live in a flat with a rating of D, but it's in quite a nice part of London, and I would be quite miffed if it was treated as sort of very low value property, frankly, but because those council tax values are so hopelessly out of date.
They really are.
They're a very poor proxy for anything at the moment. So if the government really does want to use it as a proxy for doing things, at some point they really ought to bite the bullet and have a council tax revaluation. But